Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. I'm with some excellent friends who joined me today, and I want to say that we had a private seminar before, and this is an extension of that private seminar, and I want to extend this to my brothers out in the world, and I want to thank everyone for joining. I wish we could turn the camera on them for a second, but it's arranged a certain way. So firstly, before we get into the content piece, and before we speak with very experienced and very different parts of this industry, firstly, I want to introduce from the left to the right, or let everybody introduce themselves from the left to the right, I should say. So, Sound Oracle, take it away, man.
I'll start. My name is Sound Oracle. I am a producer and a sound designer, and most notably, I'm the sound designer for Timberland and Polo the Don.
My name is Colin McLaughlin. I'm a writer, producer, and I now run an online mastering company called eMastered as well.
I must say I have a newfound ultra respect for Colin to my left. Super cool guy, super intense, super brilliant. He's modest, I must say. But I'm game. I'm sure you probably heard of me from BusyWorksBeats.com. I don't have much to say. So RJ, take it away, brother.
I am RJ from Try God Sound. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I didn't know what I was getting into. But I'm a producer / sound designer, and I have my own company where we have a VST that we sell to producers.
Awesome. And as you can see, very different parts of the spectrum. So it's not just one way to do something. As Colin said in the other room, there's many ways to do the same thing. And this is the one thing they don't teach you in school. They teach you that 1 + 1 = 2. What if I told you that 1 + 1 = 10 or 1 + 1 = 100? What do I mean? I mean exponential growth through the way you perceive problems, okay? Or do you want to grow arithmetically? Is that a word? Arithmetically? Whatever the word is. Yeah. Do you want to grow 1 + 1? Yeah, Urban Dictionary. Do you want to grow 5 + 5? That's 10. Do you want to grow 5 × 5? That's 25. Do you want to grow 5 squared + 5 squared? That's what? What's that? 25? That's 50. Do you want to do 5 squared × 5 squared? It's the same number. It's the way you perceive that number in which you go about growth. So the whole private music producer mastermind meeting, the official name, here in Anaheim, California, 2018, is about growth. It's about the things that you don't see, the intangibles, the variables you can't see in your station of life. And we're here to reveal those to you so that you can have control over them and control your own destiny. That's what this whole seminar is all about. We got a new guest in the back, and I want to welcome you. How you doing, brother? All right. And your name, I'm sorry? Lorenzo made it out. Awesome. We have some awesome stories here, and again, you're going to see those stories on our channel. But before I go into my long-winded rant, we were having a conversation about, the things that people don't see. How do you separate yourself in an industry that seems so saturated? Let's get everybody's perspective and opinion on their way of standing out. I believe everybody has their unique way of going about things. It's not just the genre. We went over that in the other room. It's not just genre. So using that kind of philosophy and approach, can we give everyone tips or ideas on what is saturation? How do we beat it? What are some of your stories on getting out of saturation? And I'll leave anybody who has inspiration to speak.
Well, I'll jump in. For those of you that know me, I run a website, soundoracle.net. If you know that, the tagline is be different, be dope. So my whole underlying theme is just being different and being unique. The way that I approached that, it was simple. Like, even as a kid, I'm like, if there are 100 people and everybody's wearing a white t-shirt, be the guy in the red t-shirt. And then when people point you out, just be damn awesome when they point you out. And that's how you win. So be different, be dope. So it's not so much how to stand out, it's the importance of standing out. We'll start there. Colin, you got something?
Yeah, kind of building off that, we said it in the other room too, but we're in a war for attention, right? Every moment of the day, you're being bombarded with information, and it's really hard to be able to sift through all that. And musically, the way you have to do it is you have to be unique. Same thing that he's giving the analogy here with the red shirt. You have to do that with your music, whether it's what you're actually making sonically or whether it's where you're bringing it to try to get traction for it. If everyone's trying to get on the same 5 Spotify playlists, maybe you focus on YouTube content creators that, need music for their videos. There's a million ways you can do different things, but I think there's a lot, better chance of success if you sort of find a unique place that you can sort of hit into that people need something and then offer it there. That's my attitude.
And that's a good point. Again, how do you think about what separates you? It's not just the product, it's the intangibles to the product. And we spoke about some intangibles. There's a famous teacher I love studying from, Jay Abraham. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Jay Abraham, but excellent marketer. And what he teaches is that when you leverage other people's things or the intangibles, especially in relationships, when you tap into relationships for the intangibles, you have to, like Sound Oracle said, you have to be ready for that opportunity. If you call upon access when you sowed favor 2 months ago, and you call upon access, or you're called upon, and you are now in front of 2 million potential whatever customers or potential customers, do you have enough content, or do you have the product to offer? Is your product ready? That's what Sound Oracle is saying. So even if you do these intangibles, you still have to get that product, and that product has to be different. But you still have to also think about the intangibles of stuff outside the product, which makes you different. So that's what we're kind of trying to open our minds up to, and that's why I love different perspectives, because your brain is on a certain path. Your brain is on this road, and it's constantly going on that road, and it's comfortable. If you look at the Amazon River, it flows. What's the phrase? The path of least resistance is how rivers flow. Water, yes, water travels. Bruce Lee. Yeah, I need to credit Bruce Lee before I get karate kicked up here. Kung Fu, yeah. We'll credit Kung Fu and Bruce Lee credits. So again, that's where everybody goes. And we all know the biblical story, the path of the masses is to destruction. How can you separate yourself to create your own path so that you will not have competition? You don't have to worry about saturation. You're not worried about doing things similar. And hopefully that's what we're all going to contribute, because I feel like there's stories from people you probably can't see in this angle that are aiding to this content as well. So I appreciate you brothers as well. And RJ, from your experience, what's your opinion on this, I should say? On just how to stand out from average. I think that's the bigger question. How to stand out from average.
I honestly grew up doing that. I've been producing for 12 years, but I've always made my beats different. If I made a trap beat, it might be mixed with some jazz or some West Coast, because I'm from Cali. I always try to find just something, even if it's something little like that. Like if you make the trap beats like everybody do in ATL, then of course you're not going to stand out. So even if you put one ounce of different within there, you automatically stand out. I read a book called Purple Cow. That's a great book that's on this topic, and it'll show you how to stand apart. That's just a reference from me to you. Give Purple Cow a look.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Is that Seth Godin, or is that?
He talks about it, but it's a different book. Yeah.
Different book.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of something.
That was the one we mentioned in the back.
That's why I was.
Purple Cow.
Same idea,
Seth
yeah.
Godin.
Seth Godin.
Marketer. He's written 21 books.
Mm.
So everything from Just Ship It
Mm-hmm.
to Purple Cow. So I mean, right on the head.
Man, I wish there was so much content in that other room, man, and so many parallels and concepts that it's a constant thread. And one thing I wanted to mention is that biblical students, there's nothing new under the sun. I forget who said it, King Solomon or one of the wise ones. And don't take that as a negative. It doesn't mean there's no way to succeed and make a new beginning. It means take what's already done, take the two things, like RJ said, combine it into something new. You fuse things. Mm-hmm. Just like Cuckoo Grill that Carice suggested, it's a fusion of Asian and Mexican, food. They're combining two existing things into a new thing. I learned this from a mentor, and I'll pass it. I know I'm talking a lot, thinking this is a busyworksbeats.com tutorial. But a Harvard professor doesn't give his students one book, one perspective. He gives them 3 opposing perspectives. And it's up to the student to synthesize a new perspective from everybody else's perspective. And that once you learn the power of other people's perspectives, you open up an infinite world, because you can create through synthesis, just like sound design. If you combine a square wave and a sine wave, you get a unique wave. If we can tie it to audio all day long, but it's about synthesis.
There's a piece on that too, if we're talking about music specifically, and we actually have a blog on eMaster too, where we wrote just about this a little bit ago. We found in our experience that there's this thing we call the rule of 3. And the idea is if you combine one defining thing from 3 different sources and combine it, it becomes a new thing. So for example, if you were to take, you know, the drum sounds from Timbaland and you were to take jazz and then you were to combine that with like a Adele kind of vocal, that's a completely new thing that the world's never heard yet, right? Now maybe that example sounds terrible, I don't know, but it's worth a shot as a producer, right? Because if you're the first guy to sort of find a combination of rule of threes that works, that's amazing. I mean, you're already halfway through the war by doing that. So sometimes combining unlikely things that are already working for other people, grabbing pieces of them and combining them together with things that don't sound like they would go together is actually a really good way to build something completely unique that hasn't happened yet that could be really amazing.
That is an excellent point. I like to pick up from there too, because that's also a great way to let's see, how do I want to make new ideas palatable. So for instance, you have a new sound that you want to put out and it's crazy. I mean, like chocolate covered potato chips, crazy, right? But you know everybody likes trap. Okay. So the way I interpret it is, okay, I'm not just gonna make my sound and infuse it with trap. Well, why do people like trap? Oh, it might be the 808, it might be the frequencies, it might be the bounce. Just incorporate a little bit of that into whatever your new thing is, and that will make it more palatable for people, and then it won't be such a jarring thing. And I only say that because I've done it about 5 times in my life, and it works every time.
Look, and that can be a testimonial because I personally bought all your sounds, the bundle and everything. Yeah.
I need a new one soon. I'm dry.
I'm dry.
Dry. Changed my sound completely.
Yeah,
I'm like, I can't. It's a go-to. Like, all right, where can I put an Oracle loop in here? Where can I find something? Like, there's no way. Like, everything else is done. It's like, it's weird. It's like tasting new food you never tasted before. I was just like, well, I don't know why I wasn't eating this the whole time.
Eating this, yeah. Strawberry. And that's exactly the sounds that I find. It can be arranged. I find that those are the exact sounds I find in some of your sound kits. It's like a trap kit, but you want to be different because I don't want, I'm at the point of music production where, okay, we all know how to make a snare. We all know how to make a snare roll. We all know how to make hi-hat rolls, excuse me. But how do you make it completely different in your own way? And it's like you'll have a snare from soundoracle.net that has a reverb, callback or whatever it's called, throwing reverb or delay throw or pitch bend, some weird, so
Mathematical music genius stuff.
basically next level. So let's take that into our own kind of experience as business owners and people who had to push through the drudgery. How did you do that for your own brands, could you say? If you're willing to share publicly, it's up to you.
Well, I guess in my case, eMastered was a company that was going up against a company called Lander that had essentially $10 million in funding. They had basically unlimited resources. But what they didn't have is they didn't have sort of my experience in music and my co-founders. I mean, he's a Grammy-winning engineer. He worked with Taylor Swift, with Jay-Z, with pretty much everybody out there. They didn't have any of that social proof that we talked about in the other room that matters, right? And they didn't have the ability to connect with their peers musically because none of them were musicians. So for me, what I did, sort of being tasked with trying to figure out how to solve that impossible problem, was look around and say, okay, well, who can I sort of reach that is going to understand what I'm doing, that's going to care about where I'm coming from, and that I can actually speak to on a horizontal level that's going to care about what I'm doing. And, ironically for me, it turned out to be musicians. It turned out to be producers. And it ultimately became people that sort of were posting on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, people that were making content for other musicians. And the way that it sort of worked was we had this tool that could really help them with what they're sort of trying to teach people how to do to improve their own music careers, right? And the idea was if we can help their users and help their followers make better music, then that helps them, makes them look better, and it makes us look better. And so it was a really kind of an easy pitch once I sort of figured it out. And I was like, look, we can help your customers and your followers make better music, and that's going to make you look better, which makes you more valuable to them, which helps us too. And it was, once people tried it and loved the sound of it, it was pretty straightforward from there. But that was kind of the initial way to do it. You know, obviously our competitors were just sort of throwing money on ads and stuff like that, and that wasn't something we could do. But, you know, it's just another point too that shows you just because you don't have the same, you know, axe or sword as the other guy doesn't mean you can't still win the fight and find a way to get in there. So
There it is. Strong words.
yeah, I made
From the
my own
general.
axe.
I was a Lander guy, and then got to E-Master. I was like, dude, it's not even close. Like,
there it is.
it worked, man. Like you converted me. I was a dude that used that because, you know, engineering and all that stuff, it's expensive.
Yeah.
And, you know, I make too many beats to just see what it sounds like if somebody wants to master it to somebody. So I threw it in there, and I was like, man, it's cool. And then I got to yours, and I was like, whoa, this is different. You know, I tell everybody, like, dude, you got to get on E-Master. I heard Land, like, look, I know you heard of that, like you heard of your favorite cereal, but right under that, there's other stuff there. You know what I'm saying? There's more stuff. You know, and it was great, man. So the product is awesome, and it speaks for itself.
Oh, I appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
And that's the beauty of it, is that he's actually part of the producer community. It's not like a random unfaced company with, like, you know, so that's what I respect the most. And that's why I love using your sound oracles, because I know you. And I feel like every time I use your sound, it's like, oh, me and my friend are working together. I know it sounds goofy.
That's powerful right there. That's really powerful. I just got that. And it hit me. I was like, when you know the people whose tools you're using, it takes us to the next level, which leads me to a point about with your brand. It always has to be the people behind it. So they can have a $10 million budget, but if they're not connecting because they personally have experience with the users, what they've gone through, they can't iterate the product enough to make it work for that everyday user.
Absolutely.
That is a super great point, and that goes right into, you know, how to push through the drudgery and to rise above the competition. If you think about sound design or production, there's somebody that can have some fire sounds, or you got fire beats. Everybody has that. Your 15-year-old cousin has that. But the thing is, when the people know you, they know my story. They know where I came from. They know I live in Atlanta and how I got to Atlanta, and they know how I show how I make these sounds. Well, then it becomes different. I hate to use the terrible saying, don't sell the steak, sell the sizzle. But it's really the intangible things that you were talking about. It's not just the product. It's what can you provide outside of the normal experience that everyone else is providing. And it's those little personal touches, especially when you hone those personal touches to not only show people or tell people who you are, but you develop yourself to make sure your story is right. Make sure your story is great. Make sure your story connects with the people. Those are the little things that will just give you that slight edge over the competition.
You just reminded me of something. I mean to cut you off, but you're just flying out to Anaheim, or excuse me, flying out to LA and then going to Anaheim, the hotel I'm staying in. I figured even though it costs a little bit more, it's not the features of the hotel. It's not that they have a nice bed. It's not that they have nice sheets. It's who's going to stay at that hotel when I go out into the lobby or the elevator. I told Jay this. I said, you never know who we're going to run into in the elevator. I think we met the owner of some business right inside of, you know, the lobby floor elevator. You just don't know who you're going to run into. So that's an intangible, is who are you going to be around when you get into that environment. And I'll let you speak, because every time I hear somebody ask me, yo, how's the Track Gods VST? Look, ask the man himself. He's right here, sick of answering your questions. And I'll let you share your experience.
Okay, so honestly, the way I got started with Track God, it started from me wanting to launch, which I'm still trying to do, launch a social media website. But I didn't have the funds to do it, so I'm like, okay, where am I going to get this money from? Producing, I used to produce and sell beats. That wasn't working at the moment, so I'm like, dang. And I saw, you know, a couple people doing the sound design and running the Facebook ads and running the Google ads, and I'm like, man, I could do this. So eventually, I did it. I started out with just a 808 drum kit, and I ain't gonna lie. when I first started, I was kind of just tweaking sounds. I was just taking 808. Throw some distortion on it, call it mine. But eventually I'm like, you know, I can't do it this way. Got to get my conscience clear. So I contacted somebody to do a VST, to do the development. But the way that I tried to stand out was because I saw everybody was doing VSTs. You know, it's 1,000 different VSTs out there these days. But I'm like, it's not too many that's targeting the hip hop producer. And then on top of that, all of the VSTs are so complex. It's so difficult to navigate if you're new to the producer game. I think you said you were just producing for like a month or so. So like for somebody like you, not that you can't do it, but you know, you don't want to have to worry about sound designing. You just want to get in and cook up. So that was my angle right there, to try to make it to where, okay, we got this one VST, and you can like all the different effects such as reverb, delay, everything is kind of set up to where you can just move one knob and then you get a good sound out of it. We kind of try to set it up for you to where you can just easily tweak it. And yeah, it worked. It worked.
So that was your way of discovering your niche. I'm going to say niche.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of like the popular word. And I wanted to kind of segue this conversation into the next point, which is how do you take your, independence or your way to get away from the crowd into true independence? How do you convert the fact that you're standing out? Okay, now you're standing out. How do you do it on your own so you don't have to rely on, the systems of iTunes or the systems of Spotify or the systems of the labels? They're all being demonized this year. Specifically, who's being demonized the most? Atlantic, yeah.
Atlantic.
But shout out to Atlantic. We have respect for you here. There's no beef. We're just saying that.
Atlantic has cut me checks. I like Atlantic.
So how do you guys feel like we can take being different and make a career out of it, make a living out of it, so we can actually do more good?
So I don't know if this is working still, but the first piece I think to that is, and I think you talked about this in the other room, but people don't buy products, they buy solutions for problems, right? So no matter what you're doing, if you're not solving an actual pain that they have in some way, it doesn't matter if it's the greatest thing in the world, you're never going to be able to make money on it. And, it's really hard to wrap your head around that. I remember I was always like, well, wait, if I just musically, you can even apply this. Like if I just make really great music, people will buy it and stuff. And it's like, somebody asked me once, he's like, why do you think country music does well? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really like country music. And he's like, okay, well, country music does well. Listen to it more and tell me what you think. And I gave it another shot and listened more. And I was like, wow, I actually really do like it. And he's like, why do you like it? I'm like, well, it just makes me feel good. And he's like, okay, well, when do you listen to it? And I'm like, I listen to it when I'm with my friends, if I'm driving around or something. He's like, yeah, there's a moment in your life where country music solves a problem for you. It gives you sort of like a fun soundtrack to your moment, right? And that's what why does country have the same lyrics every time? This is why, right? Because it's fitting. They found a way to make it fit this mold that makes you feel a certain way, that fills a void in your life, right? And that's why it does so well as a genre every single year. When every other genre comes in and out, it's kind of always there, right? And I started to think about that. I'm like, if I'm making music, if I can't think of a scenario where someone's going to listen to this, when are they going to listen to it, right? So, are you going to make EDM? Well, it better fit into a specific spot then. It better be like a party song where they're going to listen to it at a party, or it better be like a really relaxed song that they're going to listen to before bed if it's a more like chill step kind of thing. Or if it's hip hop, is it like a party hip hop song? Is it like a Drake emotional R&B song? Like, again, if you can't sort of find a place where this is going to fit, it probably won't fit anywhere, right? And having that mentality and understanding that if you can't find a way to sort of solve someone's pain with whatever it is you're doing, whether it's music or a business or a software or a plugin or anything, it's just probably not going to work, right? And it's not always easy to think about things that way, but it's really hard to like just sell a rock to a guy, and it's really easy to sell like a brand new car to a guy that doesn't have a car, right? Because he needs a car at that point. And I think whatever you guys go on to do, whether it's music or anything else, I think that's the most important thing, because even if you're the purple cow, if it doesn't have that, you'll never be able to make money on it. And if you can't make money on it, it's not really a business and it'll never become one.
You just reminded me of Jamar's story of his stand-up comedy history. What is stand-up comedy? It's to relieve pain. It's even Kevin Hart said, had a tour called Laugh at My Pain, so that you can relieve your pain through his pain. So everything, even though it's entertainment, or even if it's entertainment, there's value to it in that it's solving these problems for people. Now, I didn't mean to, Oracle, I know you got some wisdom on this, how to take being different and then spin that into doing your own thing.
Actually, I do. First of all, if you're different, you know what the norm is, then you know what you have. So clearly, you know the difference between the two. One thing that has worked for me and has helped people was getting people to realize their difference inside of them. Because I don't know who heard my story, but when I came up, I was doing production, interested in production. I was the only person in my city that even knew what a producer was at the time. Nobody even cared. So I knew I was different. I just had a passion to keep going. And I look out, and now that I have an audience, I can see certain people that feel the same way, but they might not have that thing in their head that tells them to keep going. They say, I just can't make it, or I can't do what everybody else is doing. And the thing is, you have to realize there's a difference inside of everybody. There's that one thing that you can do better than anybody else in the world. Well, mainly that's be you, number one. But there's that thing, or those certain things that will just set you apart. But I encourage people to look deep within themselves, to look for those things. And also, you have to have perspective, because with perspective comes clarity. And when you have clarity, you're able to look deep inside and actually find out all these special things about you, not just the trials and the tribulations that you may have. So not to go off on a super emotional rant about it, but that's my contribution to it.
It's funny you said emotions, because I was going to tie that into Colin's input, which is that emotions are evergreen. They never change. That's why we're playing music from the 1950s in video games, because it ties an emotional thing to that scene or that whatever the product is. It's based on emotions, just like the words we say are based on creating emotions, like the book Rob Cialdini, Influence, right? It's about emotions, not manipulating the emotions of people, but taking those emotions into account when people make decisions. It's just understanding how people receive you, and that's what perspective is all about. How do people receive you, and how can you be a better giver? If you understand how people receive, they can receive. Imagine someone not receiving, yet you're trying to give them something. Just like in relationships. If your girlfriend does not want a hug, she doesn't want a hug. You can't give her a hug. She's going to run from you. She's going to dip the hug. She's going to dive on, So it's about the receptivity of your audience, and how do you make them better receptive for something good for them? Because we can all block blessings and block our blessings through what's called an ego. So the goal is, how do you get behind this wall or this barrier called the ego to give them something they need that they don't think they need or think they want? And that's the deeper kind of conversation, but I'm not going to hog up mic time as I usually do. If I was in comedy, Jamar, I would be, you know how they flash that red light to tell them to get off the stage? The light would be gone. I just keep talking. But RJ, I really want to hear your perspective on how can people okay, we all know we want to be different. We know that, but how do we do that and then create our sustainability, I should say, or so to speak?
It's really confidence in being different, sticking with it, not running away because it's not working. Because being different might not work when you first started. I did a lot of experiments with my production. It didn't work. I thought it was dope at the time, but I just kept sticking to it. I knew that if I just keep being different, eventually it's going to be good. It's not going to just be different. Because when you first start being different, it's different in weeks sometimes. But eventually, if you keep it going, it's good.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off, because that's going to take us into the third thing I was going to say. So I'm going to let you speak firstly on the third thing, but that is now that we're different, now that we created a career out of being different, how do we create an infinite barrier of defense against competition? How do you do that? Oracle spoke about it. He gave the answer. I'm not going to take his flame away, but continuing on that theory, how do we, now that you've discovered yourself, now that you've created a lane, how do you defend yourself from people who are trying to snatch that lane from you, basically?
Trying to snatch. Okay, so you do what you do, then they try to take what you're doing and try to do it as well. That's what you're saying?
Competition. The
Yeah.
definition of competition.
Yeah. That's the case. Well, you're already the leader in it because you did it first. So as long as everybody know you did it first, then you already got an advantage there. And then I would say, man, it's hard to just, you can't tell nobody not to get in your lane, but it's really just staying true to yourself.
That's the secret. We'll elaborate on that. That is the secret, but we'll elaborate on that, of course.
Yeah.
I feel like Oracle has a little more to say about that.
I always have a little more to say. But no, but you touched on a really good point. It's about confidence. You have to have that confidence. First of all, I look forward to when I do something new and different. I'm looking for people to copy me because that is the first sign that, damn it, boy, you did something right. But I always will have the confidence, like, well, I did this thing. I was the first one to do it. I was the best one to do it, and I'll continue to be the best one to do it. And or back to Bruce Lee, adapt. Be like water. While you're chasing the last thing, I've done 2 more things. So you're gonna have to chase these things too. I learned that from Timbaland. Look at how many times Tim has changed the sound of music. While people were trying to catch the last sound, he's on to something totally different. And then they finally catch that. He's 2 steps ahead of that now. That's the thing. You take that same confidence, that same desire, that same whatever it was that made you different in the beginning, and you just keep multiplying and you keep applying that. The more you apply it, the more you win, and then you get stuck in what I call a confidence loop because, action, action begets action. And once you accomplish something, confidence, which gives you confidence to take more actions, and you just multiply and you keep it going. And next thing you know, you're so caught up in that, when you look back at the people that are trying to copy you, they're copying you from 2 years ago.
There's a venture capitalist named Paul Graham, and he started an incubator called Y Combinator, which is basically a company that gives really small amounts of money to startups when they're like brand new. And the idea is when they become really big, then his tiny little percentage that he owns is worth billions of dollars. I mean, he did this with Airbnb. He did this with Dropbox. I mean, he's a billionaire now because of this. And he has an amazing phrase just on this. And what he says is, missionaries always beat mercenaries. And what he means by that is if you're sort of the person that sort of creates the sound, right? Or creates the thing that becomes unique and now people are copying it, well, they didn't come to that conclusion initially on their own. They're basically coming to it from seeing you do it. So just by the nature of that, it's not really something that's really inside of them, right? Eventually, those people don't have the stomach and the fortitude to keep pushing through when things get hard. And when the competition ramps up, they usually sort of start to fall away. And the last example of this too is with Airbnb. Actually, this happened. There was a company in Europe that raised, I think, $250 million right when Airbnb was like starting to ramp up. And Airbnb had raised like 20 or 30 million, I think, at the time. I might have the figures wrong, but they were much, not nearly as well funded as this other competitor was. And everyone looked around and they're like, oh my God, they're basically just cloning Airbnb, but they have $250 million. And Paul Graham said to them, believe me, they will not win because they're basically mercenaries. And they're in this for the quick buck. And if you just buckle down and deliver great value to your Airbnb customers, eventually they're going to fall away and they can't hang with the big boys for long enough because their heart's not in it. Sure enough, that ended up happening. And Airbnb became the winner, even though they didn't have the same amount of funding. But it's a really great point. I think, missionaries always beat mercenaries. So if you kind of come up with the thing and it's really inside of you, you'll be able to survive the competition because they don't really have that same edge.
Well, that's a good point because you just tied into something I was studying the other day in a podcast. I can't recall his name. So unfortunately, I can't credit you. Sorry for this information. But he was a venture capitalist. And he said what he looks at when he's giving out millions and millions of dollars to companies in order to invest to make more millions and millions. He said what he looks for is that the company that's coming to him for money, that person was an operator in the business, meaning they took it from janitor level all the way up to CEO level. They know everything and everything in between. We spoke about that in another room. Mm-hmm. And he also said not only that they're an operator, but he said he'd rather give money to the man that failed 3 times through bankruptcy than a man who came out of Harvard, with an MBA who thinks he's entitled to all this money just because he has his degree in something. And that's what the modern day, we don't illustrate this enough, is that a college degree matters, but it doesn't matter as much as people make it perceived to matter as. I don't know if I worded that right. But it's not valuable in the fact that it will get you things automatically because that's entitlement. And when you go to college and you listen to people and you listen to how they treat the staff, a lot of them are entitled. I even became entitled, to a certain degree during college. And that's because everything's given to you. You didn't have to prove yourself. You're just going through the ranks. And I want to speak on the real world versus schooling. Like, what's your history? What's the difference you see? But before we get into all that, I want to get to the lesson of why I brought that up, which is I go on 80 tangents in a day.
Tangent on, brother. Tangent on.
My brain is all over the place. So this venture capitalist, he said he only gives it to operators. He will give it to the man who failed 3 times in bankruptcy over a man who never opened a business ever. And then you spoke about something. That's all I had to say. Let's pass it to RJ about the real world versus the structured, perceived world. I'll say perceived world.
I would say, as an artist, the school life isn't for me. I mean, it could be for you. For me, it wasn't for me. Like, it was a little too structured in the sense that if you're at home and you go on YouTube and you want to find out how to do some production stuff within Fruity Loops or whatever program you use, you can get straight to it. But if you go to school and you try to do this stuff, then they give it to you in a certain order. You probably won't get to what you really want to get to till 3 months within the class or whatever it may be. So I dropped out when I was 21 years old or so. Was told not to do it. I almost got kicked out the house, but it worked out. Basically, my parents gave me a bet. They said if you can't make X amount of, well, they told me either I gotta get a job or go to college. I'm like, okay, how can I get out of this? So I gave them. So I gave them. I basically told them, I said, okay, if I can make X amount of dollars per month, then can I stay here? Because I didn't have the money to just dip out. So within like 3 months, that's when I actually launched the Track God VST, and it worked out. So I ended up staying. So I forget where I was going with this. I'm on a tangent myself.
I found something in there.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah. So as an artist, for me, college wasn't for me. So for some people, it does work. My sister's an artist as well. Like, she draws. She's going to college right now, but I'm kind of looking at her like, do you really want to do that? So yeah, I would say go with your heart, but school, my opinion is that it's not the best for the artist.
And one thing I wanted to pick out of that story is that this is what you can't learn in school, when your back is against the wall. That's what I believe creates the entrepreneur, the real entrepreneur, not just the guy who got his MBA and learned how to raise $100 million. It's the guy who had to figure out how to survive when there were no other options. And that back against the wall cannot be taught. It has to be experienced. So unfortunately, it sounds horrific, but that's how you turn a negative into a positive. That's what, the ancient teachings of the Kabbalion are about. If you're into the, occultic teachings and whatnot, it's about how do you turn these perceived negative things into a positive thing. And you have the power to do that as your being. Whether you believe you're a spiritual being or whatever you believe, you do have that power, and it's through perception. So can you guys share some moments in life where it seemed like the biggest negative thing, but you look back and you're like, wow, I'm glad that happened, or wow, I'm glad I went through that fire?
Please go before me, because I'm gonna go off on this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's too many to count. I mean, the first thing is, I think like 10 years ago, for our parents, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, like going to college kind of just correlated with success. That's clearly, I think, not the case anymore. But the good news is, I think like the world is open in a way for us that it was never open for anyone else. I mean, like, did any of you guys know like people in the music industry before starting any of this stuff?
Not at all.
No, none of us did. I didn't know anyone. In fact, I was actually the guy that eventually, because of my YouTube stuff, I started out doing like YouTube covers of EDM stuff. So I was literally the guy that back, 15 years ago, I would have had no shot. I mean, they would have just said, you can't get the record deal, go home, dude. And, I would have been doing God knows what now. But the beautiful thing about the world that we live in now is no one can tell you anything. All that matters is what you can convince people to do and what you can emotionally connect with people to do, right? So, I mean, look at Busy, right? He's built this entire community, this entire world around what he has to offer, that I don't care if anyone thought it was a good idea in the beginning. It sure as hell is now, right? Look what he's accomplished, right? This VST. He could have showed this VST to everybody, and they could have been like, "Oh, it sucks. We're not gonna buy it and put it in stores." He doesn't need anyone's opinion. He can put it out himself, and if it's good, it's gonna sell. Same with the sounds. I mean, the Timbaland sounds, that whole era was way ahead of its time back then, right? Like, I'm sure a lot of A&Rs probably would have heard that stuff before it was out, and was like, "Yeah, like we don't really like this. We're not gonna do this," right? didn't matter because they had the
actually
way to,
happened.
yeah, because they had the way to get it out there, right? The beautiful thing now is, whereas school was really important back then, and I still think it has some value, you can basically literally do things now that you couldn't have done before. And if you sort of come up with a unique thing to build or a unique thing to solve for people, it doesn't matter who you know. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it or how many MBAs or years of experience you have. You can pull it off. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the most exciting thing about the world we live in now, to be honest, because it's never been this open for anyone. I mean, even just like payment stuff, right? Think about it. Like 10 years ago, you had to store someone's credit card information like in your house, right? Like, and then like your house gets stolen. Oh, sorry. Like now you get sued by 4,000 people, you know, because you gave away their credit card info. Like you don't have to do that now. There's companies that do it for you that allow you to take all that risk away. It's just incredible what's open to us. So that's what I think.
PCI compliance.
Yeah, it's like all that stuff is insane.
No, that was great. And so apparently there are two topics going on here. One is school, the difference between real life and school, and the other is the things that were perceived negative and how they turned into a positive. The first one I'll focus on is the school thing. When it comes to school, and I'll speak from a music standpoint, because everybody in here knows somebody that went to Full Sail or a similar school, right? The one thing that I found about most of those people, the people that were good going in were good coming out. The people that were bad going in were bad coming out. I've never gone to music school. Honestly, I am totally not with instructions or authority. So that was my thing. I was a kid in school that didn't go to school, but I would get A's on all my tests. I just wouldn't do any work and I wouldn't show up except for test days. So I think when it comes to schooling, if you're the type of person that can find those differences in yourself and you don't just take things at face value, then school might have a little something for you. But honestly, it's someone telling you how to do something in a structured way. So you're going to do it more than likely the way that person told you. You may have a way that if you had to discover this on your own, that you would do it the way no one has ever thought of, ever. So that's why when I get new equipment, I don't read the instructions. I think, what do I want to do with this? I don't care if it does it or not. I'm going to make it do it. Schooling, to me, unless you're just that solid person on the inside, it kind of washes that away a little bit. It kind of dumbs it down. You don't have to think about how to do it. You don't have to think about how to make it work. Someone's going to tell you, and there's a curriculum, and you get stuck. You can go to diagram C. There's no diagram C in the real world. You just have real world experiences. It's not working now. How do I make this work? Or everyone's doing it this way. How can I be different while using the same thing everybody else is doing? Well, the last thing you want to do is ask somebody how you can be different from everybody else, because they're going to tell you how they do it. You know what I mean? So I'm not opposed to school, but I am always on the side of the real world.
One other thing I think it's worth mentioning with that too is there's a really big difference between school and learning and education, right? And I mean, I'm sure you guys agree, education is never a bad thing. Like if you're trying to learn about producing or anything you're trying to learn about, just dig in there and find what's out there, because it's going to inspire you in other ways and teach you other stuff that you probably didn't think of. And that's just it's never bad to have more tools in that toolkit, right? To choose from for a given thing. I mean, I think 40 said it, Drake's producer, he said, you need to learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist, right? That's like the famous quote. You have to know what these guys are doing before you can just, low pass all your drums like 40 did in the beginning of the Drake stuff. And everyone's like, why are you killing all the impact of your drums? And he's like, just wait, 5 years from now, you're going to get it. Yeah, it's going to be the sound. Whatever we are now, it's still the sound. But yeah, I think that's an important piece, right? And the problem right now is we're in this weird time where, this is a really long topic, but like school hasn't caught up with the real world in terms of like what you need to know to like do things anymore. So the stuff that you're learning there isn't really as relevant as it used to be. But the good news is YouTube, Google, there's plenty of places to learn pretty much anything that does matter now, and it's all out there if you're willing to find it and look for it.
I agree. And where's Chris? Oh, Chris asked me which books I read. I said, that's a good question, but I wish I read more books. Meaning, every day you're going to learn a lesson in business. I mean, whatever it is, you're going to learn lessons, and it's stuff that's not written down. You have to adapt. Like Oracle said, it's so fast that writing it down would be in the past. Did that rhyme? Bars. Bars. Yeah. And we were talking about school. You know, I had students come from, Full Sail tell me that, wow, your music theory prepared me so when I went to Full Sail, I wasn't confused the first week in the music theory concepts. Or students come to me from a bunch of colleges, I can't even remember the names, but well-accomplished people, well-accomplished colleges, and they're still coming to Busy Works Beat saying they learn more in a week than they learned at these universities. I'm not discrediting universities, however, because they teach you stuff that is super high level. But as far as, academia versus real worldemia, it's a different game. It's a different ball game, and it moves so fast. You can't literally write it in a book, like Alan said. So, I mean, you didn't say that. I'm saying you said it, so you said it. So when we soundbite this, but what's your opinion, RJ? As far as, well, you gave your experience, but do you have anything to add to that?
Basically, same thing y'all said, same thing I said. You can get it faster online. You can go to YouTube, get whatever you want. If you do it at school, it's going to take forever. That's my underline on school versus real world. But other than that, no.
Yeah, I just thought of something that I forgot to say. Education versus learning, or versus, what was it?
Yeah, like learning. Schooling versus learning.
Schooling versus education. You have to get educated every single day. I have to learn or else I die. If you don't have that mentality, you're going to be wiped away by the wave that Oracle said, the wave that you have to create, or else somebody else's wave is going to knock you out of the way. Mm-hmm. So it's the brutal reality of not only life, but again, if you guys are trying to make this your own business and your own careers and things, this is how you have to think. Because again, it's warfare. It's not something you jump into playing, with water guns. You're trying to figure out how to build your own, this is probably not politically correct, but your own nuke. You're trying to find out how to build your own massive thing that nobody can stop you against. Mm-hmm. So again, probably not PC, but whatever. Oracle, share your story
Actually,
about
the world's not PC.
So actually, wait, but before I go into that, I want to say the reason why I even know Busy is because I jumped online one day to take a YouTube University class real fast. I wanted to know something, and I just typed in my inquiry. I didn't have to, pay a tuition or anything. I just typed in my inquiry, and who came up? Busy. Oh man, learn what I needed to know. Next video came on. Shit. All right. And after that,
he's everywhere.
This guy's legit, to the point where I reached out to him. And I'm like, hey man, listen, I like what you got going on, whatever. But that was all because of YouTube and just jumping on to educate myself on a very specific thing.
And one thing I meant to mention again, you guys are always pulling on brain strings, is that it doesn't mean that all this is not validated and secured. It just means find a mentor and learn from that person, because they're a living book. They're living and adapting, and they have to adapt or else they're going to die, or else they wouldn't have the success they have. And they can, if they're good teachers and good leaders, what makes a good leader is they're a good teacher. And everybody sitting with me is some form of a leader, okay? And teaching is part of that. And you want to find a mentor who can teach you in their ways so that they can translate it as fast as possible, so that you can keep up with the markets and learn and grow faster than them so that you can teach the next man. But again, everybody has their theory on finding a mentor. But instead of thinking of which books and which, YouTube channel to look for, look for a mentor, a person who can teach and lead and actually have the success, or observe people who do get the success. Because a lot of people think if you didn't achieve it, then you don't have anything to offer. Then tell that to, the Harvard research team, the people behind the scenes of all these awesome companies who did all the legwork and testing out medicines through the rats and mice. We were talking pre-med with my boy back here. How you saying him again? Arash. I didn't want to mispronounce it. With Arash, we were talking about, medical things and dental school and whatnot. And without those legs of research, without those people behind the scenes, we wouldn't have these brilliant medicines that are selling billions and billions and billions of dollars. So it doesn't just mean that I'm the guy who's the CEO of the medicine company, so I know everything. So again, another perception that we have to add to the conversation. But I wanted to move into this fire flame thing because I've gone through things where. Again, are you good on time? Because I feel like I'm kidnapping Colin right now. Okay,
Yeah, this is good. I'm enjoying this.
This is really a hostage negotiation right now. No, I was gonna say I've gone through my experiences of facing that flame, like RJ brought up. You know, your family almost literally dissociated from you, and you had to find a solution. So I feel like we all have our own story. So I'll be last in that, sharing mine. But what do you guys want to share? What are you guys comfortable enough to share? I'll leave it open for anybody. Oracle knows he's gonna be long-winded. Yeah. I'm trying to see.
I'll do I have a lot of these too, but I'll do a kind of a quicker one. I had almost the same story.
Okay.
I went to college and then went to grad school for music business for a year at NYU. And I remember I had a real aha moment when the woman was teaching a press release class. Like it was like on music marketing, and she was teaching us how to do press releases. Which, first of all, have you ever even seen a music? I've never even seen one, I don't think. But I asked her a question about music blogs, because this was like 2011, so like music blogs were still really big, right? There was no Spotify. It was like, that was a huge way to get out there. And she was like, well, what's that? And in that moment, I was like, what am I paying my money for, right? Like if she doesn't even know what this is, why am I going to be spending my hard-earned money on this? Like, I can't do this, right? And so instead of taking out a loan, I had convinced my parents to basically give me like some of the tuition for the first year. And I went to them, I'm like, guys, like I'm dropping out. I can't, this is just insane. And they're like, well, they're from the old world. You can't drop out. You need a college degree. You can't work in the music industry without a graduate degree, And I'm like, guys, I can't do this. They're like, okay, if you don't find a way to pay for yourself in 2 months, you're out. Same exact story. And so literally I had been thinking about this Purple Cow stuff we've been talking about up here for a while. I'm like, okay, well, YouTube is big. People are watching these YouTube covers. There's this guy named like Tyler Ward and Boyce Avenue. I don't know if you guys remember this era, but these guys have like the most views ever now. I mean, Tyler Ward makes like $5 million a year touring. Like they're like massive now. But there was like nobody else at this time doing it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm like an acoustic guitar kind of guy back at this point. I'm like, what if I just do EDM songs with acoustic guitar? If I do that and then I sort of remake the song so I don't have to pay the mechanical royalty because I'm re-singing it myself and I'm reproducing it, then I can basically put it on iTunes, pay a percentage of the fee back to the original creators, but then I get to keep the rest. So all I have to do is make songs that people like that are covers and do them in a unique new way, and then just drive traffic to iTunes and get people to buy it. I think that's worth trying, right? It turned out it was really worth trying, and it worked extremely well. But if that hadn't worked, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, I was like, my back was totally up against the wall. I had 2 months to figure out a way to make money doing it. And so, you can imagine my mom's face when I walked in with the first batch of checks, like, hey, look at this. She's like, what? Like, you're like singing like random EDM stuff on a video site? Like, what is this? But it just goes to show that, if you believe in something and your heart's really in it, you can do it. And, that was a really tough one for me. That was one of them. The other one that was really tough is I remember there was a moment with eMastered where we launched the product for free initially, just to kind of, gain users and get some stuff out there. And I remember Smith and I had put all of our savings into eMastered to kind of, because we didn't raise money for it or anything, we just sort of went for it. And we got down to like our last like few $1,000s left. And literally like if we didn't make any money from it, like at that moment, I mean, it was going to go out of business. That was going to be it. And we had no more money to put in, and the bank wasn't going to loan us any money. We had like no revenue or anything. So, it's a funny story. We looked at each other. We're like, well, we need to start charging for this now. We can't and we had absolutely no idea what to charge. We had no idea if anyone was going to pay. We had no idea if it was good enough. We thought it was good enough, but that was it. It was literally a complete Hail Mary moment of like, okay, we're going to put on the pricing and we're going to go to bed and pray to God that when we wake up, somebody bought something, right? Sure enough, the next day we logged in and we had made enough to like keep the server going for another 3 months. And it was like, but it was that close, And it's really scary. Even telling the story now, it's like bringing me back to that moment because of how bad it was. But it goes to show that nothing's really that easy, especially when you're trying to do something like we're talking about, create your own way and your own sustainable life. But you have to make those really hard choices, and that's what really separates people that sort of create stuff like this and kind of do what you guys are doing here too, and sort of make your own way, and the guys that just kind of go work for someone for the rest of their life, because most people can't stomach that, and they can't stomach that moment or that feeling of, I don't know if if no one buys this, my servers are done, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Which isn't to say you should run your business so poorly that you're in moments like that, but you get the basic idea.
Did it give you confidence, like more confidence after?
Oh yeah. The next morning, and now it's like, I've sort of stood on death's door there, right? So like I know the lowest point it can possibly go to, which sort of gives you more confidence too, because it's like, if you've seen the worst of the worst, you know what it's going to be, so you can sort of even handle that if it comes at you again.
There you go.
You want to share? Sorry.
Oh yeah. Okay. So out of the 1,000 of these I have, I'll pick one. Probably the biggest one. So I was living in Baltimore, Maryland. Had a studio. The little hood studios, $30 an hour, and you're still not really getting a whole bunch of that going on. And I'm trying to sell beats. For the record, my beats have always been fire since day one. But that does not mean that people would buy them, because I was just in the wrong location. So let me fast forward the story. I have no money. I have a studio that has no electricity. I'm stealing electricity from across the hall of another business when they go home. I'm sleeping in the studio. I'm hungry. I'm sleeping next to a vending machine that I can't afford to get food out of. Okay? It's real. And then on top of that, someone broke into the studio and stole everything.
No.
Everything. So after that, of course, I didn't know what the hell was going on, and I'm just trying to figure it out. A friend of mine was like, you should move to Atlanta. And I'm like, nah. Even though this is a terrible situation, I'm like, nah, I don't want to leave. Stupid. But so I go to my girlfriend's house that night, and I'm like, this fool told me to move to Atlanta. She's like, great, when are we going? And I'm like, oh, I wasn't going. Definitely not you. So, but as a man, I'm kind of put on the spot, and then the logic kicks in, like, well, what the hell are you really staying here for? So I'm like, well, shit, while the car is still halfway running, that might not be a bad idea. So ended up just moving to Atlanta within the next 3 weeks. Okay. Come to Atlanta. Now, not only am I still making zero money, I'm in a different place, and I actually have somebody who is depending on me now, because she had a job, she had a house, quit her job, gave up her house. The plan is, we're going to go to Atlanta. You're going to be great at music. That's what I'm going to do, and she's going to work. So that happened. She got 2 jobs, and what I did was, instead of being fearful, I'm like, let's put a plan together. So I found out where all the studios were. Fortunately, in Atlanta, all the studios are in one spot, the major ones. So every day, I would just go to North Side, that's where all the studios are, and drive up and down North Side every day. Go to same studios on the schedule. I'm here at 2:30, I'm here at 3 o'clock, I'm here at 4. Now, when I say go to the studios, I don't mean go in the studios, because no one would let me in. No one knew who I was. So I would just go and talk to the people at the front door, at the front desk, whoever it was, every day, until I just got cool with them. And then eventually they listened to my music, and then they would pass it on to other people, and they would pass it on to other people. And then I got a meeting with Polo. Then I started working with Polo, and then he went to LA, and that's how I met Tim. But the point of the story is, all of that negative, I mean, I was at ground zero. Well, I thought, and then all my stuff got stolen. So that was like sub-zero. Then on top of that, to come down to Atlanta, have zero plan, and for the first time in my life, someone depending on me who has given up something solid, that's a back against the wall moment. But it all worked out. It took me 90 days. I was in Baltimore, Virginia, DC, New York, all these places, my whole life. People wouldn't buy anything. People didn't care. They just told me I was dope. But it took having that moment of back against the wall, let's try something different. Worked out, long story, kind of short. I told her to quit her job. I ended up getting a check. She quit her job, and now asked her what she wanted to do. She wanted to go to school for photography. I didn't know she even cared about pictures. All right. Put her through school, and now has her own business. One of the best headshot photographers in Atlanta. So, yeah. So from all of that negativity, if it wasn't for all those negative moments, I wouldn't be here talking to you all today.
And not even the people here, the people around the world, the people who are going to see it in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 years, 10 years, 30. So it's multiplying that negative into a super positive. And again, this is your superpower that we all have to discover. And that's your USP, your unique selling proposition. Your story, however shameful you are about it or bashful to tell people about it. Again, I had a weird story coming up. Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Oh, I just saw you like this, ready to say.
I'm always ready for action, Jack.
Put me in, coach.
Yeah, my bad. And don't be afraid to share your story because your DNA, your story, your perspective are your sunglasses. Nobody else has that pair of sunglasses ever, and they never will. And that's your infinite value. Quickly, I'm not going to go on a rant. My story is that, after graduating college, Arash and I'm not going to put you in the pool, but after graduating Villanova University for pre-med and biology and all the cool stuff, the accolades, everybody tells you, oh, you're going to be a neurologist? You're going to be a doctor? I'm getting all this pressure. Are you a doctor yet? You going to med school yet? And it's just social pressure on top of social pressure. So I graduate, and there's a little gap of time. And I don't have any jobs coming out of school. Everybody else had jobs when they were in junior year. They had them pre-made jobs for them, almost like templates in a FL Studio. So I'm sitting there clueless, not knowing what to do without a job. And my mother gracefully allowed me to stay in her extra room for a little bit of time. So I'm looking, at my student loans. I deferred them as long as I could. For what, 6 months is it, Jamar?
Yeah, 6 months in the military deferment, you can get longer. But hardship deferment, there's always ways to defer it, but the interest is compounded.
There it is. Yeah, deferment plan.
Systematic savings.
Systematic savings. Awesome, brother. And I tried to defer them as much as I could. It was 6 months initially. But then I said to myself, because you can only defer up to like 3 years or something like that. So I said, if I defer again, I'm just cutting back on my safety net of deferment. So it's a weird way to think of it. But I said to myself, okay, student loans are coming. They're about to be a reality. I had no idea how I was going to pay $400 or $200, whatever it was, a month, without a job, without any income whatsoever. And just to give you some backstory, in senior year, what got me through survival was YouTube AdSense, which was nothing, back then. You had to pass $50 thresholds to even get paid, and you only get paid 2 months after you made the AdSense. So it wasn't like a career, but it literally sustained me enough to create. Like Oracle said, he had that environment where somebody allowed him to create. And that's the key. If my mom didn't support me, shout out to my mom, I love you infinitely and eternally. If it wasn't for her supporting environment, I wouldn't be able to invest in things that nobody else believed. Because as an entrepreneur, it's your job to crystallize something that's not in this reality. Okay, your idea does not exist in this world. So everybody you're talking to thinks you're crazy because you're saying stuff that doesn't exist in their perceived reality. So it's your job to stick to that vision and crystallize it through execution and through constant development. So long story short, it was summertime. I was sitting in my mom's extra room on my bed with a hot laptop on my lap. Okay, it had a broken mouse wheel. It was terrible. You know how the air vents at the bottom? Like that was on my thigh, so it was just heating up super hard on my thigh, tearing up skin. I had like a patch. It looked like I had a tattoo. It was messed up. I probably needed a bandage at that point. But just thinking to myself, I know I can do it. I was depressed at that point, I will say. This is before I had the dog. So shout out King if you're watching this, King. Love you too, King, my dog at home. But it's those moments of I have to make something or else I'm literally not going to survive. And it's that infinite polarization between 0 and 1. And again, you can only experience that because that's when you experience both sides of the spectrum. And you have to figure out a way to cross that chasm. But that's the journey of life, okay? And that's what we're here to teach you, how to cross that chasm, how to go from 0 to 1. And RJ, your story was super. Again, I never had a family that would have kicked me out, Colin as well. So I don't know how tough that is. I've heard stories and been around people who've had that story, but can you explain like emotionally what you're going through when somebody says that? Or even in the beginning where you feel like nobody supported you?
Yeah, it's tough. Cause like you said, that you're telling them this stuff that doesn't exist in their world. So they don't understand that. And I didn't understand that until recently. Because I tried to tell my girl as well a plan of, this is what I'm trying to do. This is how it's going to work. She's like, that's not going to work. You need to get a job. But in my mind, I'm like, this is going to work. So I never lost confidence, and that's key. Emotionally, I was down as far as it's like, damn, nobody want to believe in it except for my homie. Shout out Bruce. Me and him, we into this entrepreneur type of stuff. We read a bunch of books and stuff. So it was him. He believed in me. But it was tough. But having the confidence, and then you also said having enough to sustain. So I was producing. So I had two things going. I was producing, wasn't making as much money as producing as I had in the previous years, but it was just enough to put into Facebook ads or Google ads is what I started with. So it was just enough. If you don't have Google Ads, I'm no way affiliated with Google, but you can go get it. You can go get $100 credit. I think if you put in like $25, and I think that's what I did. I don't know if they still got that, but that gave me $125 to kind of experiment, see what the ads are going to do, and eventually it worked. So just having enough from the production to put into the VST development and advertising helped me get over the hump. Like just having that little bit of hope, which was the little bit of money coming in from producing. So, but yeah, it was tough.
Forward. And I just thought of something when you were speaking. I always get like ideas when you guys talk. It was that perception is reality. So it's the game of making people believe. I'm just going to leave you with that. You can discern how you want, but that's everything. The reality doesn't exist unless people believe it exists, period. And what you believe in, somebody else doesn't believe in. So it's your job to make somebody else believe in what you believe in. And that's the whole ball game of everything we're going to talk about in this whole seminar in the future. That's the art of building your dream into a reality. Not spending time building somebody else's dream, believing so hard in somebody else's perception, or making your belief their belief, whatever. You know what I mean? I know I didn't do that justice, but
and I learned to not hold it against them, because I used to hold that against them for not believing in what I was trying to create, telling them it was in my world. So it took me a while, but everybody that I'm saying this stuff to, girl, mama, daddy, I don't hold it against them anymore, because that really is just what it is. They literally don't live in that world that you live in. So you have to take it as that and just keep your confidence.
And that's a good point, is that we make the mistake. They don't believe in our unbelieved reality. Like, everybody doesn't believe what we believe. So that we pitch them as the complete opposite of a believer, which is a disbeliever or non-believer or the enemy or the devil.
Hater,
adversary. So we make that mistake just because we haven't done our job, which is to convince them of our reality. So I mentioned this in the back room. The reason I had everyone introduce themselves and speak to everybody is because it's your duty to introduce what you can do for somebody else. You never know if somebody else needs something, and you're that one person that solves their problem. If you have to constantly project what you do, because you never know who needs it. Okay, and you're being selfish by not projecting that message. So it's a flip of philosophy that's going to switch your results. But let's move into, again, this is a pretty long segment, but let's move into creating defense. I know we kind of veered off from the business angle, but since the seminar is kind of business related and it's a mastermind meeting, how do we create infinite defense? You don't have to give all your secrets, Sound Oracle, about how nobody's going to touch you and your brand. Unquantized podcast. Everything you release, I buy. Literally. Spacewalk, bought it. Articulate, bought it. With the Drumulate bonus, bought it. I actually buy his products. It's not him sending me stuff. He might send me stuff to be like, yo, check this out. But I'll actually go and purchase the bundles, because I support everything he's doing. And I love it. And he's Sound Oracle and Unquantized podcast, which will go down, here? Friday?
Tomorrow, yes, tomorrow. Here.
Oh, you know what? It's not. Oh, you're going to do it West Coast
later.
time.
Yeah, West Coast time.
Which is going to be East Coast time. Okay. So we'll figure that out. But that's going to be awesome for those who are showing up tomorrow. But again, I went on a tangent and lost my train of thought. What was the train of thought? Oh, defense. How do you create it so that I spoke to Ilmine? His thing is Blap, like Blap chat, Blap kits, Blap. What else? Blap. Give me something else. Blap something. Whatever it is. Blap on the radio. That's his USP, his unique selling proposition. Something nobody can copy. So how can we share information or knowledge on how somebody can create that infinite defense? What do you think, guys? And again, you don't have to share all your secrets or any secrets. You can be as vague as you want to be. Just the most important ones.
I think the strongest one possible is network effects, is what they call it for business growth, which is basically the idea of a community, right? If you have a community, it really doesn't matter how much money someone else has. It doesn't matter how much more credibility they have. It's basically impossible for them to enter that community if you've set it up right. Right now, if you do it, on a Facebook page or something like that, yeah, you can get screwed. But if you have your own email list, if you have your own, your own podcast, your own infrastructure that you control, it's really hard for somebody to get in there. And on top of that, I think you always have to basically be pushing the boundaries yourself. It's better for you to be the guy that's pushing the envelope further than it is to let a competitor do it. Because if you are able to do that, obviously there's other ways like intellectual property and stuff like that. But that's a different kind of conversation that isn't really music related. But the other thing too is more on the music side. It's like if you have that unique sound, I mean, people can copy it, but they're not gonna really do it. And especially if they do it, the person that does it first usually gets the majority of the accolades and of the success and the traction. It's funny, we were talking about trap before. Like, I feel like Lex Luger is a good example of this, right? Like Lex was not the first trap guy, but he was the first guy that got there at that level. Right. And then there might have been much more talented guys perhaps that came afterwards or not, but he was there, right? He kind of had that for a long time. Yeah, it was him for like years, like 3 or 4 years straight. It was pretty much the Lex Luger show, right? And then, Mustard came along, right? And Mustard had his own sound, and then it was kind of his thing. And then other people made it, but he was already Mustard. They don't need it if they can get it from Mustard, and he's already established, right? So I think being first is really important. I think setting up a community around what you're doing is really important, and pushing the boundaries of what you're doing beyond all the time. Like he was saying with Timbaland, that was a great example, right? Like, he's always pushing it past. So when somebody copies Timbaland, they're already too late because he's already past that.
Way too late.
Yeah.
I had a good point, kind of stemming off what you said, is that the community, like our company, BusyWorks Beats, is about you. That's why I always want to dig into your specific story. How can I add value to you specifically? I don't want to talk over your head when you came here. I don't want to make you feel alienated. And I apologize, Lorenzo, for not kind of talking with you because everybody else got their just due bonding time. But it's very important to me because that's what separates BusyWorks Beats from everybody else. We have companies come in and try to be like, we'll pay you $500 for a video and all this type of stuff. I only work with who I want to work with. I have Colin here for a reason. It's because I trust Colin. He's sincere, and he has something awesome to deliver value to you. I wouldn't just bring these people around, okay? Oracle on the left. Again, another person I think has the best podcast, period. My favorite, every Friday at 4 p.m. So we get to make the decisions. Instead of being manipulated by these companies that throw money at you, you get to say, no, I don't, because it's going to break the integrity of my brand. And you get to make your own decisions. And this is the infinite defense you were talking about. Your USP, excuse me.
There's actually one other piece to that, too, that I just realized I forgot. And it's the idea of basically just brand power. So if you look at fashion's a good place for this, right? If you look at a company like Gucci, right? Or any of these like really hot, like Louboutin, like really high fashion brands, they like never go on sale, right? There's always some product that comes in. In fact, this is the craziest example. I've once shown, an ex-girlfriend of mine, like a Gucci bag that was like a knockoff bag from the exact factory that the real ones are made. So it's literally the same bag, right? But it doesn't have the exact logo on it because the IP issue. And she genuinely like didn't want the bag because it's not the real bag, right? And this blew my mind back then, but now it makes perfect sense after learning more about this. People care about brands and they care about what the brands represent, right? And if you're able to build that, you basically are immune because, there's always you'll never have to compete on someone's price. There's always going to be some guy that comes in with a knockoff that's cheaper, but people won't want it because it's not real, right? Ferrari, can charge insane prices for their cars. And yes, there are great supercars, but there are also amazing supercars that are way cheaper than some of the high-end Ferraris, right? It doesn't matter. People still want the Ferrari because it's got the brand, it's got the recognition, it's got the connotation to it, right? And if that's also one of the hardest things to build is sort of that, like, the way that the fashion brands are able to build that is a perfect example of it. But if you can do that in whatever you're doing too, I mean, that's just completely bulletproof, because then you have pricing power, you have, information power with how you want to talk about what you're doing, and you're basically invincible. I mean, you never have to play the sales game or let's slash our prices to compete with what everyone else is doing. You can just, be Ferrari, be like, we're going to charge this much for our car, and if you don't like it, go buy whatever the heck the next best thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can go buy like the other sports car that's like, $200,000 instead of the 450 or whatever it is. But I think that's worth mentioning too.
This is what I love about your brand. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say that's a good point. And one other thing, I think I touched on it earlier that I would mention, is connecting with people on a level that's just deeper than the physical product. Connecting emotionally with people, like I said, people know about you, they know about me, they know about Busy, they know what you represent, where you're coming from. Once you are in with people like that, it would be hard for someone to just pop up, because they'll pop up with the same physical product, but they don't have those other things that you have.
This is what I love about your name, Track God VST, is because the name alone is what people want to be, and that's the intangible. So you could
That was actually into why I chose that name. It's kind of weird because you think when I first chose that name, it was like maybe 5-6 years ago when I came up with that name, but it was kind of like blasphemous for you to call yourself a god, or some rappers were doing it, but I'm like, they call. Not that I am Michael Jackson, but they call Michael Jackson a music god. They call, it, and that's what I want people to strive to do as a producer, to be a god of production. That doesn't mean you're calling yourself, Jesus or anything like that. So that's what the name. And then I heard you guys talking about community and defense. How do you defend that? And you guys were saying, all of the intangibles other than your product. And I would say that one way is to be a person from that community. That makes it easier for you. So if you are literally, this is kind of corny, but literally follow your heart, like what's inside. And if that's your product or your music, or how you're producing, if it really comes from inside, you're going to attract people who are just like you, like-minded, like the same type of sounds that you might be producing. So be of the community, and it's not hard to try to pretend. So like when I'm like writing some website copy, I'll throw a for show in there, or like something hip hop, because that's my crowd. My crowd is the hip hop crowd. So you can't be scared of doing that nowadays, and you actually have to embrace being a part of the community.
That's a good point. You have to step into their shoes, because again, we're fighting against the ego, the thing that blocks us from things that would actually benefit us sometimes. And I wanted to speak on, you said the intangibles. I don't want to leak too many cats out the bag with this secret, but think about some brands. What are we all chasing? We're not getting the Ferrari because it's a fast car, like Colin said. The Ferrari, and it's a terrible car. I heard that it breaks down in like the first 90 days. But I still am looking for Ferrari for any type of,
We'd love to find out.
We'd love to find out ourselves. But we're looking not at the thing, okay? We're not looking at money. We're looking at what are we trying to do with this money. We're not looking at the car. We're looking at how that makes us more attractive to mates, because the car is really social proof that can't be forged. You can't make a Ferrari. There's no bootleg Ferrari, okay? When you have a Ferrari, it shows that you can spend $250,000 extra on a car, let alone, imagine how much your house costs. So it's proof to women that you have funds to sustain them and do a bunch of biological things. So it's a deep-rooted thing about brands that separates that brand from everybody else. Think about Gucci and Louis Vuitton. It's one intangible is status. So, for example, we have VIP status, and they're going to have a whole section where they play their tracks over the aux. It's a status thing, and people lord status over other people. We're all chasing the social hierarchy. And one thing about hardware versus VSTs, the real thing versus the analog thing. The digital thing. You have probably compressors in the other room that cost like $5,000 minimum or something like that. I don't know what's in the other room exactly, but hardware is extremely costly. Okay, now some people collect hardware just to say, I can afford this, you can't. And I can say that's probably one reason why I bought the Virus TI synth. Just to be like, nobody else can get this, I got it.
Not a
You
bad
don't-
buy. That was a good buy.
And that's another intangible, is just lording things over other people. So this is how you need to think. If you're really trying to separate, again, it's not necessarily the product. It's not the Ferrari. It's the intangibles of the Ferrari. So those are just a couple ones. I'm not going to leak everything out of our. So that's for the $10,000 pyramid mastermind this December in Philadelphia, in the Masonic City of Philadelphia. So I mean, that was an excellent, panel. I don't want to call it a panel because I feel so lackluster. This was a brotherhood sharing session. Does that sound cooler?
Sure.
Brotherhood sharing session. Sounds a little occultic, but it's deeper than just vague, fluff, vanilla, surface level stuff. This is how can I change somebody else's life, talking to them as they are. So, again, I think we did an excellent job. Not to pat ourselves on the back, but I believe this message is going to go around the world and change lives, and that's the purpose of BusyWorks Beats. Now, did you guys have any hot things you were on your mind before I just randomly close this off?
I'll save mine for tomorrow.
Oh, you got to come back. Anticipation. That's how we do it. All right, guys, let's just wrap it up. Thanks for watching today again. We got Sound Oracle on our far left. Shout out. We got Colin McLaughlin. Am I saying that right?
That's
I always
right. You
say
nailed it.
There it is. I practiced. To my left from eMastered. And then we got myself, Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. And we got RJ from Track God. Is it God or Gods?
Gods.
Okay, I say Gods. Okay, I wasn't sure. But Track Gods. To my right. Thank you again for joining us. It's BusyWorksBeats.com. Awesome. Thank you, guys.